think our defense is our bread and butter, and 90 points is too much for any team for us. So I just think we got to go back to the drawing board and fix the little.
Imagine stepping onto a professional basketball court where almost everyone in the building secretly wants to see you fail, where veterans of the game have allegedly held private meetings just to figure out how to physically and mentally break you in front of millions of people. This wasn't just another game of basketball. It was a calculated execution attempt orchestrated by an old guard terrified of losing their spotlight to a rookie who was rewriting the entire economic structure of their sport. When Caitlin Clark walked into the WNBA, she didn't just bring millions of new fans, record-breaking television ratings, and unprecedented revenue. She brought a massive, undeniable target on her back that made every single night a brutal fight for her professional life. Whispers had been circulating in tunnels and locker rooms for months that the established stars were sick of the endless media circus, sick of the charter flight debates, and absolutely furious that a rookie was being crowned the undisputed queen of a league. She hadn't even played a single minute in yet. It was an environment so intensely toxic that rumors of coordinated physical targeting began to surface, with fans and analysts alike wondering if the league was purposely trying to run its own golden goose out of town just to protect their fragile egos. The disrespect was palpable. The hits were undeniably harder, and the referees seemed to suddenly swallow their whistles whenever the rookie from Iowa was forcefully thrown to the hardwood. It wasn't just about winning basketball games anymore. It was about sending a violent, undeniable message that the old hierarchy was still in charge and that this newcomer needed to learn her place at the bottom of the food chain. But the veterans who thought they could simply bully her into submission were about to learn a very painful, globally televised lesson. And what happened next would shock everyone who doubted her resilience. The hostility didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was a slow, calculated buildup of deep-seated resentment that had been brewing since Clark's legendary collegiate run dominated the national headlines and overshadowed the professional ranks. Established players who had grinded for years on commercial flights, making minimal salaries and playing in half-empty arenas, were suddenly watching a 22-year-old sign massive multi-million-dollar endorsement deals and single-handedly dictate the entire economic future of their sport. While publicly many veterans offered politically correct, heavily filtered statements about the growth of the game and rising tides lifting all boats, leaked reports and locker room rumors painted a much darker, much more vindictive picture of jealousy. There were whispers of exclusive group chats where players openly mocked the rookie struggles during the first few weeks of the season, taking a sick, twisted joy in the Indiana Fever's abysmal early record and Clark's rising turnover numbers. Every time she got caught in a defensive trap, was aggressively blindsided by a screen or missed a contested shot, a collective knowing smirk seemed to wash over the veteran benches across the entire league. It was a baptism by fire unlike anything seen in modern sports history, with opposing players going completely out of their way to deliver cheap shots, brutal hip checks, and forearm shivers that heavily flirted with the line of actual physical assault. Analysts and former players started to genuinely wonder if the psychological toll would be too much. If the relentless pressure and uncalled physical abuse would force her to completely alter her generational, free-flowing playing style just to survive the grueling 40-game schedule. The media narrative began to aggressively pivot, with critics eager to label her a product of manufactured hype who simply couldn't handle the grown woman strength of the professional ranks. But that wasn't the whole story, because a specific storm was brewing in Las Vegas that would force this tension to its ultimate breaking point. No team in the league embodied this intimidating veteran-heavy resistance quite like the defending champion Las Vegas Aces, a certified super team loaded with Olympians and all-stars who operated with a ruthless championship-level swagger. Under the bright lights of Sin City, the Aces had built a modern dynasty based on overwhelming physicality, elite trash talk, and an absolute refusal to let anyone disrespect their crown, especially a rookie who was getting more media coverage than their entire championship roster combined. But even with their star-studded lineup and defensive accolades, the Aces knew that dealing with Clark's unlimited shooting range and supernatural passing ability required a very specific, highly aggressive kind of defensive enforcer to execute their game plan. Enter Tiffany Hayes, a battle-tested, non-nonsense veteran who had literally unretired and signed a contract with Las Vegas for the sole, specific purpose of bringing gritty, physical lockdown defense to a team desperately chasing a historic three-peat. Hayes wasn't just a regular defender. She was a psychological tormentor on the court. A player who built her entire decade-long reputation on getting deeply under the skin of elite scorers and making them absolutely miserable for 40 consecutive minutes. She had seen every offensive trick in the book, defended the greatest guards in the history of the sport, and carried an unapologetic old-school mentality that rookies had to earn every single inch of hardwood through literal blood, sweat, and public humiliation. When the whispers surfaced that Hayes was being specifically unleashed and instructed to guard Clark, the basketball world collectively held its breath, knowing this was going to be the ultimate, undeniable test of the rookie threshold for pain and emotional frustration. Hayes was supposed to be the unbreakable brick wall that the Clark hype train finally crashed into. The veteran stopper who would physically overwhelm the rookie, strip her of her confidence, and expose her lack of professional strength to the world. It was the perfect storm of veteran experience versus rookie potential, raw aggression versus elegant finesse. And the stakes couldn't have been higher for a league watching its own internal power struggle play out on national television. And just when everyone thought the rookie was walking into a slaughter, the narrative took a completely unexpected turn. When the highly anticipated matchup finally tipped off, the tension inside the sold-out arena was so thick you could practically cut it with a knife. With every single fan acutely aware of the violent defensive assignment unfolding on the court, from the very first possession, Hayes attached herself to Clark's hip like an inescapable shadow, initiating brutal physical contact before the ball was even inbound and heavily testing the boundaries of what the notoriously lenient referees would allow. The Las Vegas strategy was brutally obvious and unapologetically mean. Bump her aggressively off her favorite spots, grab her jersey through illegal screens, step on her toes, and use every single veteran trick in the Dirty Play handbook to disrupt the rhythm that made the Fever's offense so deadly. For a brief terrifying moment in the first quarter, it actually looked like the relentless pressure was working perfectly as the physical toll of navigating a chaotic maze of flying elbows and aggressive close-out close lining seemed to momentarily frustrate the young point guard. The AC's bench was incredibly vocal, allegedly shouting defensive commands and harsh trash talk that completely crossed the line from competitive banter to deeply personal disrespect, actively trying to mentally break the rookie in real time. You could see the subtle, arrogant smirks on the faces of the Las Vegas veterans every time Clark was knocked completely off balance, thrown to the floor, or forced into a rushed, uncomfortable pass. Absolutely convinced that their calculated bullying was executing the exact blueprint they had designed behind closed doors. The referees were letting them play an incredibly physical bordering on dangerous brand of basketball, completely turning a blind eye to the constant grabbing, holding, and shoving that would have immediately drawn flagrant whistles in any other matchup on any other night. It was a brutal, grueling showcase of the unwritten rules of professional sports where the new kid on the block is forcefully mandated to run a gauntlet of pain just to prove they even belong on the same floor as the champions. But what the Aces didn't realize was that their constant physical abuse was acting like a pressure cooker. And what happened next would leave the defending champions entirely speechless. Instead of backing down, shrinking into the background, or complaining to the officials like so many rookies before her, a chilling, dead-eyed calmness washed over Clark's demeanor, signaling a terrifying realization for the Las Vegas defense that they had just woken up a sleeping giant. She stopped trying to force her way blindly through the physical traps and started using the veterans' extreme, undisciplined aggression completely against them. Putting on an absolute jaw-dropping masterclass in offensive adaptation and high-level basketball psychology, Clark began to actively manipulate the pacing of the game with surgical cold-blooded precision using subtle hesitation moves, pump fakes, and elite changes of direction to leave the over-aggressive defenders aggressively swiping at thin air and colliding into each other. When Hayes tried to aggressively crowd her airspace and get chest-to-chest, Clark utilized her generational court vision, threading impossible needle-threading passes right past the frantic defense to wide-open teammates for easy, uncontested layups, systematically dismantling the A's defensive rotations piece by piece. The overwhelming frustration began to visibly and dramatically shift from the young rookie to the seasoned veterans as they painfully realized that all their physical intimidation wasn't stopping the offense. It was just loudly exposing how totally outclassed they were in raw basketball IQ and spatial awareness. The massive crowd started to sense the undeniable momentum shift. The roar of the arena growing deafening with every brilliant read and every perfectly executed offensive set that made the defending champions look completely lost and desperate. Clark wasn't just surviving the hazing anymore. She was orchestrating a beautiful, violent, highly calculated revenge on the court, tearing apart the defensive schemes that had been built specifically and exclusively to destroy her reputation. The whispers and trash talk on the Las Vegas bench suddenly went dead silent, quickly replaced by bewildered looks of genuine panic and frustration as they watched their supposedly foolproof veteran game plan unravel in spectacular, highly embarrassing fashion. But that wasn't even the whole story because the most humiliating, ego-oozing moment for the old guard was still waiting just around the corner. The absolute climax of this legendary tension-filled showdown happened in a sequence that will be permanently burned into the memories of basketball fans forever. A moment of pure, unadulterated dominance that shattered the veteran hierarchy into a million jagged pieces. With the game hanging in the balance, the crowd on their feet, and the intensity at an all-time suffocating high, Clark found herself completely isolated at the top of the key with Tiffany Hayes dead set on locking her down in front of a screaming, divided audience. Hayes aggressively crouched into her defensive stance, slapping the hardwood floor and completely closing the gap, ready to deliver the kind of suffocating chest-to-chest pressure that had broken the will of so many elite guards before her. But Clark didn't panic. She didn't call for a screen and she didn't look to pass. Instead, she casually pounded the basketball, looked the grizzled, trash-talking veteran dead in the eyes, and unleashed a lightning-fast, highly complex combination of crossovers that instantly broke Hayes' defensive rhythm and balance. With a devastating violent step-back maneuver that created an absolute ocean of space out of thin air, Clark launched a heavily contested 30-foot bomb from the arena logo right over the desperately outstretched fingertips of the stunned off-balance defender. The arena seemed to go completely silent while the ball was in the air, only to absolutely explode into pure unhinged chaos as the shot ripped flawlessly through the net with a deafening, echoing swish. But it was exactly what happened immediately after the impossible shot that truly broke the internet and cemented her legacy in real time. As Clark confidently jogged back on defense, she didn't look down at the floor or celebrate quietly with her teammates. She stared directly into the soul of the AC's bench and allegedly let them know with every single ounce of terrifying unapologetic confidence in her body that she was the undeniable real deal and that their time at the top was officially over. The look of absolute soul-crushing shock on Hayes' face told the entire story. The veteran enforcer had thrown every single dirty trick and physical hit she had at the rookie only to be completely dismantled, outsmarted, and embarrassed on national television. It was a legendary, undeniable statement of sheer superiority. A definitive echoing declaration that absolutely no amount of physical abuse, locker room jealousy, or veteran coordination was going to stop the inevitable total takeover of the league. And the immediate aftermath of this viral moment would send massive shock waves through the entire global sports landscape. The fallout from that single history-making performance was immediate, incredibly loud, and absolutely devastating to the carefully crafted narratives that the league's veterans had tried so desperately to protect all season long. In the post-game press conferences, the usual cocky, dismissive, and highly arrogant tone of the defending Las Vegas champions was completely gone, rapidly replaced by forced praise, tight-lipped answers, and a stunned, quiet realization that the landscape of their sport had permanently and irreversibly shifted. Reporters who had spent the entire early season aggressively asking if the rookie could handle the physicality of the pros were suddenly flipping the script, pointedly asking the seasoned veterans how they planned to survive the offensive onslaught and unlimited range of Caitlin Clark. The locker room drama and bitter resentment that had been kept mostly behind closed doors suddenly spilled completely out into the open, with rampant rumors circulating that several veteran players were absolutely furious about how badly their defensive schemes and physical tactics had been exposed to the entire world. The massive media machine, which had been so unbelievably eager to highlight her early season struggles and turnovers to generate clickbait, completely reversed its course overnight, airing endless slow-motion replays of the exact humiliating moment she broke down one of the most respected, feared defenders in the world. It became undeniable, irrefutable proof that the unprecedented hype wasn't just a product of clever marketing, favorable collegiate matchups, or media bias. It was a pure testament to a transcendent generational talent that simply could not be guarded or intimidated by traditional old-school means. The old guard, who had fought so incredibly hard to keep their tight, exclusive grip on the league's power dynamics and media attention, was forcefully made to swallow their immense pride and publicly acknowledge that the rookie was not just surviving their brutal initiation, but actively, happily conquering it. It was a deeply bitter pill for the established stars to swallow, knowing that millions of new fans had tuned in specifically to watch them execute a defensive hit job only to witness them get completely outclassed, outshot, and deeply humiliated instead. But the massive implications of this legendary viral performance went far beyond a single regular season victory or a bruised veteran ego. This monumental shift wasn't just about a rookie hitting a few deep three-pointers in a regular season game. It was the exact highly visible moment the entire financial, cultural, and competitive power structure of the WNBA was forcefully dragged, kicking and screaming into a brand new era. The league's front offices, team owners, and television executives quietly and collectively realized that the very players who had built the original foundation of the sport were now actively becoming the bitter antagonists in a much larger, much more profitable global superhero story. The highly controversial, ongoing discussions about upgrading to charter flights, massive salary bumps, expanded rosters, and unprecedented ticket sales were no longer abstract theoretical debates. They were undeniable, urgent realities directly tied to the performance of a 22-year-old phenom who was currently making veteran, highly paid defenders look like absolute amateurs. The deep-seated jealousy and the highly coordinated physical attacks had completely and utterly backfired, inadvertently transforming Clark into a highly sympathetic, heavily protected cultural icon who was single-handedly dragging the